Imagine That. Written and read to you by Josh Kler. Introduction. If you believe that you are not loved, imagine that you are. If you do not like who you are, imagine that you do. I didn't write this because I wanted you to agree with every word and tell me how much you enjoyed reading it. You might not agree with anything I wrote in this, but imagine that you fully agree with these few words. You are loved. Writing takes a lot of work for me. I find it difficult to focus on writing about one topic for an extended period. Whether you are sipping your coffee, waiting for your flight to arrive, or watching paint dry, I wrote this book for you to read and think about things that I find extraordinary and make me feel like I matter. I didn't write this for you to agree. I wrote this for you to feel like you matter and hopefully help you understand that you are a treasure. I'm not asking you to agree, but I'm asking you to imagine that you are someone worth dying for. I hope this makes your days better. I hope it means something to you. Your friend, Josh. Page 1. The Wind. When I was little, I went fishing quite a bit with my grandpa. While sitting on the edge of the pond, impatiently waiting for a fish to take the bait, I asked my grandpa, "How can we know that God is always there?" His reply, "How do you know that the wind is there?" he asked me. "Because I can feel it's there," I said. He looked down at me and smiled. We don't always feel God's company with us, but that doesn't mean that He has left us, just like the wind. We cannot see it, but we can feel it around us. We can sometimes hear the wind and see what it moves. God doesn't always show His presence, even though He's always there. I believe it's because it takes our faith to believe that God never leaves us all alone. I like how my grandpa explained the presence of God to me with just a few words. We cannot see God, but if we listen closely, we can hear Him. And while we pray, we can feel Him like a summer breeze. Just because we sometimes don't feel God near doesn't mean He has left. Do you want to feel the company of God? I feel God the most in my life when I'm by myself and open the sails of prayer. There's no telling what God will do with your prayers. Make no mistake, whether He's calm and quiet or rolling like a storm, God is always there and moving. Page 2. A sanctuary. Everybody has a place they go to chill, a place to sit quietly and collect their thoughts. It's not usually a long while we spend there, but it helps us to relax for a bit in our sanctuary. Sometimes my head is overflowing with ideas and plans. I need to sit in my quiet place and sort out my thoughts and cut out my worries. It does a great deal of good to sit someplace alone and try to understand why I'm thinking the things I am. If a concern is floating around, it can change how I feel and think. When I allow worry to brew for a while, it's not good at all. It takes my joy and hits it like a punching bag. When I sit in my quiet place and take a deep breath, I imagine grabbing my worries and fears and throwing them out of my life with all of my might. There is a reason God tells us not to fear or be anxious about anything. What does fear do? It messes with your breathing, it makes it harder for you to eat, and it causes you to sleep less peacefully. I have let fear do a number on me several times, and I now understand that being a Christian with fear and anxiety is a head-scratcher to Jesus. I'm sure Jesus looks at us like, "Guys, I'm here to help if you want. All you gotta do is ask." Jesus loves you too much to watch you fear whatever you may fear. He is more significant than those fears and worries, and He loves you so much that He wants to sit in that quiet place with you. But He doesn't want to only sit with you in your sanctuary. He He wants to be your sanctuary, the place you sit to let go of all of your hurts and all your past darkness. He can take it. He wants to take it. He wants to be everybody's sanctuary. He's the best one. I sat in many shelters, but he is the only one who gave me purpose. Jesus is my home, and we are all welcome. He'd like to be your home. It's a safe sanctuary, I promise. Page 3. The climb. When I was little, I climbed a lot of trees. I remember a day when I was climbing a big pine tree with my brother Johnny. He got close to the top of the tree, and I followed. There was a place with a wide gap between the following branches. I reached up, grabbed a branch with the ends of my fingers, and started pulling myself up. I heard the branch beginning to crack. I fell through the weak pine sticks and sappy branches. A second later, I remember being on the ground, looking up at the pine tree. I was okay, but I remember my back hurting and feeling itchy from the pine needles. "Josh," my brother said from up the tree. I didn't reply for a while. All I did was lie on the ground, feeling sore but awesome. My heart was pounding, and it was hard not to smile. When I got older, pine trees no longer held me. Most branches would bust before I got even close to halfway up. What did I learn? I learned there are trees to climb and ones to stay away from. Some can hold your weight, and others can't. Sometimes when I do something that looks exciting and new, it doesn't set well in my spirit. It's like I'm grabbing for weak branches. Sometimes we fall off trees with sturdy branches, but we don't get a good grip and end up falling. God knows the trees for us to climb in life, and He knows the others that will hurt us and leave us with scars. Walking with Jesus is a lot like climbing trees. We're safe when we listen closely to what sticks He's telling us to grab. Sometimes we may fall into unhealthy things that hurt us and those around us who we love, but God always knows where the stable branches are. He gives us ways out of unhealthy things we may be heavily rooted in. When we say that we need His help, He begins to chop away harmful roots around us and tells us while reaching out His hand, "Let's climb out of this together. Let's see a better sunrise. It's time to feel the cool breeze." Being a Christian doesn't mean that we will never fall again, but it means that we have something better than life to climb for. We have someone saying that brighter days are ahead. Jesus is right there with us. Page 4. The author of creation. God is not just a sleepless author. He's not only the artist who painted the stars into place and gave them all names. He's also giving life to everything, providing motion to the waves, and creating growing things. He didn't just write what He thought would be exciting and beautiful. He didn't just write about you and say, "That's a neat idea." He created and brought life to you and said, "I want to be with you forever and ever." You can look at the world around you and find beautiful things like waterfalls and giant trees that have been around since long before Lewis and Clark discovered animals they had never seen before. You can look at the moon and flickering stars in the sky and find wonder in the life around you. But what if you looked in the mirror and did the same? What if you loved and saw yourself in the same wonder, the same amazement and awe that God sees when He sees you? I want to see people the way He sees people. I want to live with eyes like His. My name is Josh Kler, and I'm not perfect. I've done things that I wish I didn't, but I'm starting to understand that it doesn't change the sparkle in God's eyes when He sees me. It's the same for you. There's a sparkle in God's eyes when He sees you. Page 5. Gas station standoff. When I didn't have my license for long, I was driving the Cavalier. It was a nice warm day, and I had the windows down while listening to music. I looked down at my gas reader thing and noticed I was a drop and a half away from empty. I barely made it to the gas station. I walked in to pay and felt like giving the lady at the counter some money. I pulled out my wallet and handed her more than enough for the needed gas. I told her to keep the change, and she looked at me momentarily and said, "I'm sorry, but what did you say?" I smiled and said, "I mean it. Keep the change." She looked wide-eyed at the other person who worked there and then back at me. I stood at the counter as she was laughing. I started to join in with her, and so did the other lady. After about a minute or two of standing there, I noticed her eyes tearing up. "This is very nice of you, but I can't take this," she told me. "But it's okay if you do," I told her. Now it felt like a Western standoff, and somebody needed to do something, because I started to feel a bit uncomfortable. People were behind me waiting to pay. She said something under her breath, and then grabbed my hand and put the money in it. She didn't end up taking the money, but I felt like I made her day better. I felt strange driving home. I asked God if I should have stood there for another awkward minute, but I didn't hear an answer. But one thing is for sure. Even though she didn't take the money, I made her smile. Page 6. Stepping in shoes. Trying to understand frustrating people can be tiring. It can make me feel like I should hide in my room and forget about the world around me, as I down a bag of chips and pretzels while watching psych reruns until I can't keep my eyes open with a carton of ice cream on my belly. I go for mint chocolate chip or butter pecan, but ice cream is ice cream and I'll eat it all. It takes effort to show grace and be patient with people who are hard to interact with. It helps me to tell myself that I'm hard to interact with sometimes too. I can be grumpy and a turd at times, but trying to take a breath and look at other people's perspectives can change the way we behave, even if my day is not going so well. Find a group of friends who put their hand on your shoulder, no matter what your day looks like. Be a friend who cools down your friends when they are upset. An excellent way to breathe fresh air into a room is to keep your heart open to understanding a person's frustrations. Don't say, "Stop being rude." Instead, say something like, "What can I do to help?" The best friends are the ones that chill out fires of frustrations with compassion and understanding. Every day I ask God to have eyes like His. I want to see people the way He does. I never want to have a hard heart. Page 8. Unexpected piggy bank. When my brothers and I were little, our youngest brother Nathan hid from our oldest brother Johnny. Johnny came walking down the hallway towards Nathan's room. Little did we know, our little brother had a weapon behind his back, ready for when Johnny passed the room threshold. When Johnny passed the door, Nathan lobbed a piggy bank at him. It smoked him in the head, and he fell to the floor. Big Bro got John Wicked by a toddler. Johnny now has a scar from a piggy that probably was loaded with pennies and whatever a toddler can think of putting in a piggy bank. Stuff like this happens when you have 3 brothers. And when you're little, playing may include some stitches. Did Nathan have the intent to kill? No, of course not. He just got too excited and didn't know what would happen if you threw a heavy piggy bank at your brother. He felt terrible and knew that it wasn't a good idea afterward. Johnny was okay. He still remembered his name. My other brother, Zach, and I may have been quietly laughing in our room and talking about the baby assassin with a droopy diaper. Look, sometimes we mess up and do things without using much of our brain. Often after the mess up, we notice how truly messed up our actions were. But in the moment, we don't see it as that, as we are messing up. After a while, we start to catch mistakes before they happen. And that's a good thing. If I'm being honest, when I mess up, I have never heard God yell at me for making a childish mistake. My parents didn't yell at my brother for throwing the bank, because he knew he messed up, and we all saw he felt terrible. My parents showed grace to my brother and told him something like, maybe next time, let's throw something fluffy. God knows when we are upset about our mistakes, and he doesn't mix his anger with our own towards ourselves. He puts his hand on our shoulder and says, next time, how about you throw something that isn't harmful? When we make unexpected, yet incredibly evident mistakes after the matter, God shows us unexpected grace. Page 9. A working of art. I used to draw a lot of classic cartoon characters. I wasn't too bad at it either, if I had plenty of time and a ton of erasers. It can take a while to feel satisfied with your drawing. I would concentrate hard on sketching the character's shapes the best I could, biting my lip and eyebrows so furrowed that I got a headache. Sometimes I would sit there erasing sketches and starting over and over again for hours. That's not bad. But let's try one more time and make it better, I would think to myself. When I started to see the character I was trying to draw, it was time to add colors to the character. I wanted those characters to come to life on the page. I wanted my Winnie the Pooh drawing to look so accurate that it looked like he'd jump out of the page and hug me. Some of my favorite cartoon drawings of mine aren't perfect. I don't look at my old pictures and smile because they are flawless. I smile at the Daffy Duck drawing because I like Daffy Duck. I don't smile at my Tigger drawing because it is a perfect resemblance of him. I smile at the picture because I like Tigger. And I don't know how anyone can't like him. I only create characters that make me happy when I think about them. Can I tell you something important to tell? If your answer was no, I'm too excited not to tell. God would not have made you if the thought of you didn't make him really happy and excited. We are not perfect, and we don't have to be. Jesus is excellent and flawless, so we don't have to be. But if we let him, God will keep working on us and giving us beautiful colors, striking shades of color that can only come from his pencils. You are a working of art because he's not finished. You make God really happy. He is a proud artist. Page 10. Overflowing library. Someone said that books are like gifts you are able to open more than once. Books like Peter Pan, The Wizard of Oz, and Narnia all hold ink worlds inside the covers. One of my favorite fiction books, Inkheart, is about a guy who can read things out of books and into books, but he can't control what goes in or out of the stories he reads. For example, he reads Inkheart, an important book you read about in the book, which happens to be the same name. He reads, his wife disappears into the book, and the bad guy emerges from the book. The bad guy forces him to read Treasure Island, and when he does, gold appears raining from the ceiling. This is not the order of the story, but I don't want to spoil anything if you haven't had the opportunity to read it yet. I think God smiles when he sees us building things and being creative, because God is very creative and is the most detail-oriented artist who will ever be. God even smiles bigger when we create something to please him, and when people write worship songs or books about how excellent Jesus is. God created the world with his voice and sparked the stars into existence with his words. We live in a fairy tale, And the end chapter of my days here is the beginning of the most incredible celebration and the end of pain and suffering. When I read a book, I want to feel like I'm in the world I'm reading about. The wild thing about the Bible is that we are living in the same world that God brought to life with his words. Heaven is so beyond perfect that God didn't write much about it. I don't think we could handle just how great it is while we are on earth. 2 words come to me when I think of heaven. Endlessly fearless. Imagine that. I hope you feel like this wasn't a waste of your time, because it certainly wasn't a waste of mine. You have listened to Imagine That, written and read to you by Josh Kler.